world-famous Jiggy Jaguar radio program, broadcasting live from Hutchinson, Kansas. Call Jiggy right now, 267-22-JIGGY. Presenting Jiggy Jaguar.
Yes, indeed. We are live as live can get on Odyssey today. Also, JiggyJaguar.com and our Twitch live stream. Wow, that music bed needs to be a little bit longer. Welcome to it. It is the big broadcast. So we are going to do this. We have a Zoom call. We have a interview that we are going to do with a gentleman by the name of Alfred Poors. And he is going to be with us here in just a few moments. And how this works is apparently this guy is a big frickin' deal, or appears to be a big deal, or he wants everyone to think he's a big deal. I don't know. But in order to book him on this program, I had to go in and I had to schedule a Zoom. I had to do a consultation session with him. So, what that also means is, dun dun dun, we're going to be doing a Zoom meeting. And of course, as everyone knows, I cannot stand Zoom. So we are going to see what this is going to be like when we talk to Alfred on Zoom. So hopefully we can connect with our guest here in just a few moments. And of course, since we are on Zoom, I have to make all sorts of adjustments before we can even bring our guest in here. So while we do that, you can listen to us live each and every day at 2 Central, 3 Eastern, 12 Pacific, and 1 p.m. Mountain Standard. And, of course, you can find us each and every day over there at JIGGYJaguar.com. We're also live on Twitch today, and, of course, Odyssey, whatever the hell that is. And we are on JiggyJaguar.com for live video, and the all-new JiggyJaguar.com. Go over and check that out today. We are going to be talking to our guest here in just a few seconds. And, of course, since we are on Zoom, I have to make 1,000 adjustments. But we have got our guest with us today. Alfred joins us here on our big broadcast. Alfred, welcome to the big program. How are you, sir?
I'm doing just fine. I commiserate with the bounties and challenges that technology presents.
Well, what we usually do is we either do things on the phone or we do them on Skype. And usually what I do is I send people a Skype link, they click it, and we do this. And it's not a big deal. But for whatever reason, every once in a while, we have to do this Zoom stuff. So today, we are doing Zoom stuff with you. But Alfred is a keynote speaker. He is also a health tech futurist. And he joins us today here on our big, big program. So, Alfred, give me a little bit more on your background, my friend, because you have a very, very interesting background.
I have what some might call a checkered background. I have gone for decades with no visible means of support. I started off actually way back when as a middle school science teacher, but found my way eventually to writing freelance about computers for PC Magazine, and wrote for them for over 20 years. Wrote a couple of those big fat books that you used to have to buy to figure out how to use Microsoft Word or your computer or whatever.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And then after a good run on, computers were a lot of fun. When the computer that cost $3,000 is the one you wanted, well, you cared which one was best. When the one you wanted cost about $300, you didn't care so much. And so I moved on from writing about computers. But that was about the time that we were transitioning from analog to digital broadcasts for television, and going from CRTs, the old picture tube televisions, to flat panels. And I had been PC Magazine's display expert. I wrote all the test protocols for the labs for testing monitors and all that stuff. And
That's
when
awesome.
the TV you wanted cost $5,000, you cared which one was best. When it cost $500, you see a pattern here, right?
Yes,
When
yes,
it cost
indeed.
$500, you didn't care so much. So I had a good 5 or 6 year run helping people with display technology. And then it was time to look to see what buggy whip I ought to figure out next. And a friend of mine was starting a bunch of websites and newsletters about wearable technology. And so I took him up on the offer to be the editor of one focusing on health and medical applications. And the other two didn't pan out. And after a couple of years, he'd had enough fun, so I bought it from him. So it's now all my fault. But
It's now all
basically
my
I
fault.
have
That's
a
awesome.
website and an industry newsletter called Health Tech Insider, where we cover wearable and mobile devices for health and medical applications, as well as the technology that is going to go into the ones that we're using now or are just over the horizon. I mean, for example, one of the things, diabetes is a huge chronic condition for, worldwide.
Yes.
In the U.S. alone, we spend about $3 billion a year on healthcare costs due to diabetes. If we could cut that in half, get rid of the complications that people, amputations, vision problems, I mean, there's all kinds of secondary things that follow from that. If we could cut those costs in half, that's $1.5 billion that we could probably spend better on other aspects of
Yes.
healthcare. And so one of the holy grails right now is how to test your blood sugar levels, your blood glucose levels, without having to do your finger prick 5-6 times a day. And the current best practice sort of thing is one of these wearable patches that actually sticks a little cannula, a little port under your skin, and measures it constantly. They call them continuous glucose monitors. But what people are really looking for is they're looking for ways to put it into a watch so that it doesn't have to break the skin. Non-invasive glucose measurement. And lots of people have been pursuing it. Google spent a couple years trying to figure out how to do it with a smart contact lens to measure it from your teardrops. They ended up abandoning that. But that's just one tiny little piece of the kinds of things that we cover that are going to transform people's lives. It's going to, I believe that this is the way forward for us to solve a lot of the healthcare problems, both in the U.S. but globally, to make it more efficient, more cost effective, and get better outcomes.
We have got a great guest with us today. He joins us live here on our big broadcast. Alfred Poor is with us. He is fantastic. And check out alfredpoor.com for more information on what he's up to and some of the different things that are going on. So we were discussing the healthcare situation there. Another topic that I have been trying to wrap my head around for the last couple of years is, healthcare is a huge industry. There is a lot of folks that are making a lot of money with healthcare. Is this why we don't have like Medicare for all in the United States? Is it because too many people in the healthcare industry are making billions of dollars?
So I understand that a lot of people share that point of view. It's an interesting theory and a good one, but I tend to look at it a little differently.
Okay, that's why we've got you on the show, and that's why we're having this discussion, sir.
So let's go back to newspapers.
Okay.
Do you know historically, I mean, back in the good old days of, in the Chicago Tribune and, these big name newspapers, the typical return on investment for a good company is somewhere around 5 to 10%. You have your capital investment. If you can make 5 to 10% on that year in, year out, you've got a pretty sustainable business.
Yeah. Back
in the day, any guess what the return on investment, capital investment was for a big newspaper?
Probably not much.
It was 50%. It was a cash printing machine. Because
Wow.
every big city needed a newspaper.
Yes.
You had to have it. You had all the classifieds for jobs, for real estate, for buying and selling stuff. You needed the advertisements for the retailers to reach their customers, right? People wanted to get the news, and so they were willing to, pay less than what the print cost was for the paper,
Yeah.
in order to be delivered all this other advertisement. Okay, what happened? Remember Craigslist?
Yes.
Craigslist cut the newspaper industry off at the knees. And then, as the internet grew, you've got Amazon, you've got Google search, kind of finished the job, all right?
Yeah.
And so today, you don't have the revenue to be able to manage to get the kind of return that you used to get on a newspaper. And that's why the little local town papers are folding left and right.
Well, that and a lot of them have been bought up by this thing called Gatehouse Media.
Well, they've been bought by the big companies because the only way to survive is by economies of scale, if you call it survival, and I'd argue about that. But the bigger point here is, if you have a system that is so flush with money, that's doing something that takes advantage of the situation, and you're trying to maximize the profits out of that, that is an industry that's ripe for disruption. And so I would say that, it's possible that there's a lot of forces at work that try to maintain the status quo for different aspects of the healthcare system.
Yeah.
But I would argue that if there's that much money floating in that system, and there isn't, I don't think.
Yeah.
But if there were, people would find ways to come in and take off big chunks around the edge. I don't think it's there. I mean, our son is a surgeon. He graduated from med school a number of years ago. When he was in med school, doctors who were going to go into family practice, the primary physician care kind of position, they could expect to make about the same amount as an elementary school teacher.
Wow.
After spending, 4 years of college, 4 years of med school, tons of money, it's not a way to get rich, working in certain areas of the medical system. And local hospitals are folding left and right for a whole lot of reasons, but it's not because they can't print the money fast enough. They're having trouble making ends meet. A lot of what's going on is there's a lot of savings to be made, but the problem is, so there's a great example. I'm pretty sure it was the city of Camden. All the hospital administrators from the different independent hospitals in the area got together, and they were able to realize that they had a group of about 10 to 15 frequent flyers for their emergency departments. And these people would come in, tended to be poor, often homeless, but they would come in with illness. They wouldn't get the follow-up. They'd go to a different hospital, sick again, but with other kinds of problems. And they decided to run an experiment, and they pooled some money, got some grants, I guess. And I think they picked the top 5 frequent flyers and gave each one a place to live and a social worker to make sure that they were fed, to make sure that they made it to their appointments on time, and all this. And they determined that they were saving millions of dollars a year by doing this.
Yes.
So why don't all hospitals have a frequent flyer program to create these savings? Well, it's because most emergency departments don't have a line item for patient apartments. They don't have a line item for personal social workers.
Yep.
And so it's what I call the left pocket, right pocket problem. So the savings that accrue will show up at this point in your budget, but the expense to make those savings happen is someplace else. And if the organization is big enough, the one doesn't get credit for the other. We've seen this work well.
Yep.
Before the pandemic, we weren't talking a lot about telehealth, but there was a lot of interesting telehealth stuff going on before the pandemic arose. And that was through, of all things, the Veterans Administration. The VA has an enormous population that they serve of veterans spread out across the country. And not so surprisingly, one of the major conditions that they help them with are mental health issues. But the problem is that being spread out all over the country, a lot of these veterans would live hours or even days away from the physical locations where they could get mental health treatment. And it's just not, it just wasn't going to happen that they were going to travel overnight every week to go see a counselor.
Yeah.
And so there are many issues involved, but part of it is that medical services are regulated at the state level, not the federal level. So each state licenses their own medical professionals. And if you're in state A as a professional and you want to serve a patient in state B, they have to come to you. You can't go to their state unless you're licensed there. And so with telehealth, the problem became, how do you get out-of-state doctors to be able to serve patients anywhere? And so the VA actually bulldozed their way through a lot of those issues and set the groundwork so that when the pandemic hit and we had everything shutting down and needed to turn to telehealth, not just for mental health service, but huge variety of other kinds of medical services.
Yeah.
The systems were already in place. The companies existed. The communications systems existed that were HIPAA compliant and had the security and all the stuff that you needed. And that's why telehealth was able to take off so fast when COVID struck. So there's a lot of hope for having these kinds of services that are more efficient and more readily accessible to patients.
You are so smart. You have been able to break this down. Fantastic. We've got Alfred Poor with us today. He joins us live here in our broadcast. The health tech futurist joins us here on our big program. So another situation that I want to cover with you, you do a lot with employee retention, employees, productivity, human resources, all these things. Speaking of human resources, this is going to be an interesting topic of how you would take care of this issue. But fairly recently, and I'm sure you're not a professional wrestling fan, so you probably are not going to have a clue what the hell we're getting into until we're there. But fairly recently, there has been this wrestling company called All Elite Wrestling, and they're owned by Tony Khan, who his dad has got more money than God. They own the Jacksonville Jaguars, all these other teams. And he had a guy on his roster by the name of CM Punk. And CM Punk is, he's
that's a stage name?
Yes. He is an eclectic individual. Phil Brooks is his government name, as the rappers would say. And Phil is an eclectic individual. And he looks at professional wrestling a certain way. And then there are these gentlemen, we'll use that term lightly, who work in the company as well. And they look at professional wrestling as it's all a joke, it's all fake, we're just playing, and we're actors and all this bullshit. And Phil, CM Punk, looks at it as it's professional wrestling, and he looks at it as, back in the day with, Ric Flair and Jack Briscoe and, all these guys. And so Tony Khan does not really have a human resources person on his roster. And they had a pay-per-view fairly recently, and at the post, they do these press conferences because everybody thinks that that's like the coolest thing to do because every sport does them. And CM Punk made a bunch of comments about how he's trying to run a company here. He's trying to run a business. He's trying to do all these things. And he makes a bunch of nasty comments about some of the different people that work in the company who happen to also be executive vice presidents, who happen to also not agree with the way that he does things. And he says, if anybody has any problem with me, they can come to my locker room and we can talk about it. Well, look who won the pony. A whole bunch of people that were mad went to his locker room to talk about it later. And there was a big knockdown drag out. A dog got rescued out of the room. A guy got bit in the arm. A whole bunch of other weird things happened. And so at the end of this, Tony Khan steps in and he suspends everybody. But then he, at one point, decides he's just going to get rid of CM Punk. And his television ratings go in the toilet. And he decides to bring these other three guys back who were the guys that stormed down to the locker room and had a fight. If he had a human resources person, what the hell would you have done with all of this?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not familiar with the details.
Yes.
About this one, but because first of all, in the average company,
yes,
people be fired and some go to jail.
And see, that's what I would have done. I would have just said, okay, the EVPs who stormed down there, you're fired. CM Punk, you're fired. Everybody's fired.
We'll just pull this back up a level to make it a little more generalizable.
Yes.
And I think there are two really key pieces involved in the story.
Yeah.
Okay. The first one is one of communications. Okay.
Yes.
And basically, I don't care whether we're talking somebody working in the mailroom in a Fortune 500 company, or we're talking about, the person who answers the phone at your local auto repair shop.
Yep.
Everybody wants to be seen and heard.
Yes.
Okay. It's not that they need to feel that they're calling the shots, because that's just not the way the world works.
Yes.
But they want to feel that they're seen and heard as an individual, as a person.
Yeah.
And so when this kind of breakdown occurs, the first thing I look to is how does this organization communicate? What are the lines of communication?
Yes.
How are these kinds of friction points aired and resolved if possible?
Yeah.
And some my suspicion is that there's obviously that this problem was way back upstream on the timeline.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is the thing, is that Phil Brooks, CM Punk, comes in and they instantly draw, a ton of ratings. They're selling merch like crazy. They're selling out these events. People are excited. Oh my God, CM Punk. But he also has various ways that he wants things handled. He wants to book things a certain way. He wants to do things a certain way. Whereas the other side, they just think, well, we're going to get Tony Khan to give us millions and millions of dollars.
Yep.
He's going to go get music rights from us for he's going to go pay Kansas some god-awful amount of money so we can have Carry On Wayward Son as our entrance theme.
Yep.
All these things. And even in the press conference to set this up, CM Punk was quoted as saying, "I'm tired, I'm old, and I work with children." And that's kind of what facilitated this whole thing. And I think that what happened, and which is part of the reason why I think, and you've hit this right on the head. If they would have had a human resources person and they would have had a situation here, they could have nipped this in the bud, and we wouldn't have never gotten to this point.
But my argument is you don't need a human resources person to do that, and it comes from the leadership. And
well,
so
and that too.
It's, to me, it's on the corporate leadership.
Yes.
To have communication channels in place that work. The other point that I was going to make,
yes, go ahead.
in addition to communication, is shared purpose. I don't care.
Well, and see,
what your company does.
There you
what
are.
It makes, what the service is. You need to have some congruence among the people involved in there, with a shared purpose, that you're pulling on your oars towards the same goal.
Yes.
And nobody has to agree with your goals. But if somebody doesn't, then it's not what they would call a good fit.
Yes.
And what I hear in your telling of the tale is that the leadership of the company knew it wasn't a good fit and went on anyway. Yeah. It reminds me, I don't know if you remember Annie Hall, the movie.
Yes.
But as the closing credits roll, Woody Allen tells a wonderful joke, which is one of my favorites. He says, the guy goes to the doctor and says, "Doctor, you got to help us. My brother thinks he's a chicken." And the doctor says, "Well, that's terrible. You should have him come in and see me because I might be able to help him." And the guy says, "Well, doctor, that's a good idea, but we really need the eggs." And a lot of really bad decisions are made because you just think you really need the eggs.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so in this case, the leaders of the company sound like they had one vision that wasn't shared by a key player within the organization, but they needed the eggs, and they thought, well, we'll just paper over it, we'll work through it, we'll do whatever.
Yes.
And so lack of communication, lack of shared purpose, you pretty much got a recipe for failure.
Yes. Well, you are amazing. We have got Alfred Poor with us today. He joins us live here on our big program, and he is amazing. And he is located on the web, alfredpoor.com. And you can get all of his information and book him for speaking gigs and consultations and all these things. He is amazing. And Alfred joins us here on our big program. So as we wrap up here with you, do you have like a book or anything out there that we can direct people to purchase from you? Do you have anything?
Would love to say that I do. I've written or co-authored over 15 books, but I don't have anything current that's related to this.
Yeah.
If you're interested in the health tech and the different ways that you can reach that, how that's going to impact your life and the lives of people around you, I encourage you to go to healthtechinsider.com, which is the website for that, healthtechinsider.com. As far as the speaking goes, that's probably the area that would be of most interest for people. Again, this health tech reaches into places where you wouldn't expect.
Yes.
Like human resources. I have a program about how fitness incentive programs actually not only help reduce healthcare costs, but help with employee retention, which is a really hot topic these days, as well as increasing productivity and reducing absenteeism. Another area that's related to the health tech is the whole thing about aging in place. So many people are now involved either as being older themselves or having older parents or loved ones who are choosing to live independently as long as they can do so safely. And we're in an enormous crisis in this country about having enough caregivers available to support seniors living on their own. I mean, part of the problem is that a lot of people are quitting their jobs so that they can be full-time caregivers for their elderly family members.
Yep.
And any employer who ignores the needs of their employees for senior care is making a huge mistake in my opinion. And so if you're an employer and you want to know what you can do more to support your employees who are facing these issues, and because believe me, according to some studies, as many as half of your employees bear some responsibility for caring for an elderly family member or loved one.
Wow.
That I have programs to discuss that as well. So, you can go to the website, alfredpoor.com. You can email me. It's alfred@alfredpoor.com. And I'd be happy to set up a free conversation and talk about, how I might be able to come in and speak to your company or your association or anything like that. And be happy to talk to anybody about that stuff.
Well, you have been amazing. I definitely want to do this again. Just some of the different things that I was able to throw at you, and you just knocked them out of the park. I just think it's amazing. I look forward to chatting with you again. Alfred, have yourself a wonderful holiday, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you, sir.
I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Definitely. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you, my friend. There he goes, the fantastic Alfred Poor with us today. He is going to join us, I know, again. Yes, he was fun. We are going to take a brief time out. We are live as live can get. It is the official Tuesday edition of the world-famous Jiggy Jaguar radio broadcast. And now, of course, now that I've said that, we will have all sorts of problems.